Okay, today we're going to create this. It's a magazine that you can flip around, so it's a flash magazine using Photoshop and InDesign. Very basic stuff. So here we go, we've got this original image and we're going to add in some text in between the rider and the background. So we're going to separate this image and we're just going to add some little text and a little barcode, a QR code. And then when we flip the page, what we'll get is a second page, which is this original image, but it now looks like a whole lot of separate images kind of laying on top of each other, nice drop shadow and a nice frame around them. And the third page will be just a button, and when we click on it, it goes back to the first page of the magazine. So pretty simple. Let's get on with it. First thing I want to do is get my biker picture and open that in Photoshop. So I'll right click that, open with Adobe Photoshop CS6. Same thing, CS5 will do exactly the same thing. So here we go. First thing I want to do is create the text that's going to go on the background and just behind our rider. So I'm going to go down here to the text tool and I'll wait for it to initialize, and then I'll draw a little platform for my writing, and I'm just going to create some text. I'm going to call this Fast Bikes Magazine. You can call it anything you like. I'm going to highlight that text. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, not too big, but we want it to fit across the page quite nicely. That's pretty good. It might be a little too big, but we'll see in a second. I might just adjust it to 45. I'm going to keep it white. You can change the color here, but I'm going to keep mine white. So that's the color. I am going to definitely change the font type. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to pick more like a, let me see, a handwriting. Okay, and it's a little bit big, so I'll reduce the size down a little bit. Try that again. Okay, just reduce the size down to about 40. There we go. It fits on the page now, and I'll just move it there. Now, our text layer is sitting on top of our magazine layer. If I grab the moving tool and I just move my layers around, now the image sits on top of the text and we can't see the text anymore. So what we need to do, I'll just rearrange those, is separate our biker and put him on top of the text while the background is still behind the text. Now I'm going to turn the eye off the text layer and just focus on the bike layer. So I'm clicking on that. And this is pretty simple. There's a lot of ways we can do this. We can duplicate it, use a layer mask, things like that. But I find this the easiest way. I'm going to get the lasso tool, this one here, the third tool down. And what I'm going to do is just lasso around the biker. And that should do it. Doesn't have to be perfect. Once I have done that, what I do is I right click my selection and I say layer via copy. This is going to create a second layer and it's going to just take that selection I made. So I'll turn the eye off the original image and you'll see this is the second layer we've created here, and it's just the biker. What I want to do is make sure I'm on that layer, layer number 1 or whatever layer it actually writes for you. I'll zoom in using Control+ on the keyboard, and I'll just go over here to the eraser, and And what I'm going to do, if you've got caps lock on, turn it off, that way you can see the eraser. Right click the screen, just adjust the eraser size and start erasing. Don't erase the rider, just erase the blue background. Okay, do it as best as you can. Try to avoid any major complications. If you need to zoom in more, just use Control plus. Control plus zooms in, Control minus zooms out. You can zoom right in and see the individual pixels, and then you can right click and resize your eraser size. And we'll just go through that real quickly. Okay, that's good. I'll just go up here and turn that off. Okay. That should do. I mean, you could do it a lot better. I'm just going to zoom out. That's fine. Yeah, that'll do for now. Okay, I'm going to bring back the original image. And we've got our whole image back up now. I'm also going to bring back the text. Now I'm going to grab the moving tool and I'm going to move my text layer in between the two image layers. And now you can see my text is in front of the background but behind the rider. Now I've only erased this area really well. So if I bring that text down, you'll see it's not going to be the best. It kind of goes behind the bike and then in front of it and things like that. If I wanted it to be really perfect, especially down here, I would focus on this and have more of the rider and the bike and start getting rid of the background. But my title is going to be up here, so that is perfect for now. There is a lot of things we can do to text. What we're going to do to this text layer is add some effects to it, and I'll just zoom in just so you can see the effects. To add an effect, you can right click your layer and go to blending options, or you can just double click right on the right side of the text layer and that'll bring up the blending options. In here, what we're going to do today, there's heaps of things. You can add in glows and you can add in drop shadows and things like that, which is fantastic. I always use those. Today we're going to use a bevel and emboss. The bevel and emboss we're going to use is just a normal emboss. We're going to change the shadow from black to blue. So I just clicked on the black, and instead of selecting a color here, what I'm going to do is just click on the blue that I want from the background and hit OK. Next thing I want is a, an inner shadow. And again, I don't want a black inner shadow. I'm going to click on that again and just click on the blue area. And I might just lighten that up a bit. Out there. Yeah, that's good. A nice lightish blue would do. And I can adjust the opacity on that if I wanted to make it brighter or not. About 50% will do. And the last thing I want is an outer shadow, or what we call a drop shadow. And the drop shadow color I'm also going to change, and I'm going to make it a dark blue. Actually, let me see what a light blue looks like. Yeah, dark blue or darker blue. That'll do there. I can change the opacity as well. Somewhere around 70 is good, and we hit OK on that. So that's the effect we're going for. There's a lot of different things you can do with text. Check them out, all in the effects. You can turn the eyes off some effects and see what it actually does to your magazine or your first page of your magazine. Okay, we're going to move on now. We're going to create some more text, and we want it on top of our magazine at this point. So I want to click on the first layer right at the top, and now click on the text tool, and I'm just going to create some text. I'm going to turn caps lock on and just type in Top Gear. I'll just resize that. And I'll change the font as well. We don't want the font to be the same. That's not that good. Maybe a little better. Top Gear. And what I might do is actually make that a different color. So maybe the green of the bike, I can just select that. That goes well with the whole image. And I'll hit OK on that. So we've got Top Gear. I could insert another text box and say something like reviews bikes. Make that a bit smaller again. Stretch out this platform. And also change the font color. Let's see what we can create. No, maybe just white. White will do for now. Top Gear reviews bikes. Let's create another text box, and we'll put the words finally in there. And let's make that a bit bigger. A little bit bigger. Okay. Just move that in place. If you can't move it as precisely with the mouse, what you can do is use the arrow keys on your keyboard, and you can move them per pixel, which is fantastic. I'm going to change the font color of that. Maybe make it red. Let's see how that looks. It's a bit too bright for me. That'll do. I mean, maybe too many colors on that side, but it's okay for now. There was one other thing we could do before we move on to inserting a barcode or a QR code in there. There's another thing we could do with maybe the Fast Bikes magazine up here. So that layer, text layer, is just over here. Let's duplicate that layer. Right click and hit duplicate layer. And I'm just going to hit OK on that. I can change the names, but don't worry about it. Now what I'm going to do is get the moving tool and just move that away for now. I'll just move it down here. Let's move it on top of all of our layers. Now what we're going to do with this is make it a bit smaller, and we're going to make it seem like it's kind of like clouds, and it'll be faint, really faint, far in the background behind the bike down here. So the first thing we're going to do is go to filter, and we're going to add a blur to this. Going to add a there are heaps of blurs we could do, but today we're going to add a Gaussian blur. It's going to ask us that we need to rasterize this layer. It means to turn a text layer into a bit image. And I'm just going to play around with the radius and see which one looks best. We need more than that. We need more than that. 4 is pretty good. 5 is even blurrier, and that could do the trick actually. So let's hit OK on that. What I want to do is bring that back down underneath the original Fast Bikes magazine layer. And what I'm going to do is just hit Control T or Command T if you're using a Mac on your keyboard, and this will allow you to move the image around and change its size. So what we want to do is just change its size and also rotate it slightly. So rotate it and maybe rotate it a bit more. have it line up with the sand. It's up to you what you want to do with it, but that seems pretty good there. And then what I might do, because it is fairly obvious on screen, I might want to reduce the opacity of that layer. So I'll just go over here to opacity, and I'll just drop it down so it's not so obvious on the screen. And there you go. It kind of looks like there's clouds and that it actually writes Fast Bike Magazine. There's just another tip we could do there. Okay, we're moving on. We're going to put the QR code in, some more text, how much the magazine costs. To bring in an image, there's multiple ways. You can go to your files and you can drag an image on, but the best way to do it is to go to File and then Place. Find the image you want to bring in. It's the QR code, and I hit Enter to save it. Now I need to bring this to the top of my magazine so it sits on top of everything. It's very big at the moment, and what I want to do is hit Control T or Command T if you're using a Mac, and let's resize it. Now I'm just going to resize it. That'll do. And hit Enter to save it, and then grab the moving tool and let's move it over here to the right hand side. I'm going to grab the text tool again. I'm going to make sure it's white in color and it's a bit smaller than usual, and I'm going to write the price of this magazine. Today this magazine is on sale for $9.99, and I'll just move it in place, and that's it. There's our magazine cover done. There's a lot more things you can add to this, and we'll show you some student examples soon. Okay, let's go to File. We're ready to save this. We're going to save it as, now what you would normally save an image as is a high quality, maybe PNG or something. In this case, we're taking this into InDesign, and InDesign accepts Photoshop files. So we're going to keep it as a Photoshop file. I'm going to save it on the desktop as magazine page 1 and just save that. Yes, that's fine. I'm going to minimize our Photoshop and I'm going to go into InDesign. Now this is InDesign. When it opens up, you'll see these, what do you want to create? A document is a series of pages, so that is what we want at the moment. You can create a book which includes pages and chapters, or you can create a library which includes multiple books, but this time we just want a document. If this screen does not come up, you can go File, New Document. So let's just click on Document. When you do click on that, you'll see this page. The intent in this case is for web. We want to publish it online or have it on a computer. So I hit web. Number of pages this magazine is going to have is just 3. Now facing pages, I will demonstrate what this means, but basically facing pages means that you've got one page here and another page here on the left hand side, and when you flip it, it flips over like a proper magazine. If you tick that, that's what you get. We're not going to tick that because we've only got 3 pages. The more pages your magazine has, it will probably look better if you do have facing pages. But for now, we're going to stick to 3 pages without it. 800 by 600 is the default, and we'll leave it at that. So width is 800, height is 600, and it's in landscape orientation. Everything else we'll leave it as the default and click OK. Okay, here we go. So we're going to go File, Place, and I'm going to bring in magazine page 1. Now when you select an image to place in, it comes up like this little thumbnail. Now be careful, if you click, it will place the image exactly where you've clicked it. Now what you can do in most cases is just click and drag how big you want the image. And that's what we're going to do in this case. We're going to go right to the top edge and we are going to click and drag that image all the way down to the bottom right. And that's it. It's in there. It looks a little bit blurry, and that's because it's still in preview mode. When you do export your Flash file, your magazine, it does keep all of the quality. Now, if you don't like the look of it, even in preview mode, you can click on the images, you can go up to Object and go to Display Performance and make it high quality so that it looks a little bit better. Your machine may actually run slower if you do this. So it makes the quality less so that you can run the program at a faster rate. Real quickly, you can use Command or Control minus to zoom out and Control plus to zoom in, just like in Photoshop. Our first page is done. Let's go down to our second page. Today we're going to create something really unique. We've got this cool image of a sunset. We're going to make it look even cooler. So we're going to go File, Place. I'm going to grab the image of the sunset and exactly the same, I'm going to go from the top left to the bottom right and place it in there. I can go to Display Performance and change that to high quality if I want. Okay. What I'm going to do now is go over to these rectangular frame tool here and I'm going to create some rectangles. And they can overlap, and it's probably best if they do overlap because it's going to turn out even better. Try not to have too many and vary the sizes. That'll do for now. I might just create one more big one up there. There we go. The next thing I'm going to do is get the selection tool and I'm going to rotate some of these, and it'll add a greater effect if you do rotate them, and you'll see why in a little while. Let's rotate this one over here. Okay, one more, that'll do. We could rotate a few more, but that's okay. So, now I'm going to click on my image. So click outside, so you're not selected anything. Click on the image once, and I want you to right-click the image and cut it out. And you should only be left with the rectangular frames you've put in. Now what you're going to do is click on one of the frames, and one by one you're going to go Edit, Paste Into. Not paste in place, but paste into. Now there is a shortcut for that. It's Control, Alt, and the V button. Okay, normally to paste something it's Control V, but in this case to place into you have to hold Control, Alt, and V, which is a little bit weird, but this is the effect you're going to get. If you can't do that, just hit paste into and you'll have the same effect. I'm going to do it a couple of times and then I'll use the shortcut. Okay, I'm going to use the shortcut now. Actually, I need to get behind that one there. Okay, I've just pasted into every single frame. What I'm going to do now is actually apply some effects to these individual frames so they look like individual photos that when put together make up this wonderful sunrise here. Okay, what you want to do is change this top icon up here. This is your workspace and we're going to change it from whatever it was. It may have been essentials before. We're going to change it to advanced, and you should see this object styles. We're going to create a new object style. Now if you can't click on this button, it means that you've got something selected. So just click outside of your page and you should be able to create a new style under object styles. And there it is there. It's called object style 1. I want you to double click on that. We're going to change the name of our style. We're going to call this sunrise image style because This style we're applying is only going to be used for this. Okay, what we want is a drop shadow. So I'm going to enable drop shadow. I'm going to tick it and select it. And over here in the options, I'm going to leave it to black, but you can change the color. You can even change the opacity and the angle of the drop shadow, but I'm going to leave it all at the default settings. Next thing we're going to do is go over to stroke. We're going to put a nice border around our images. I'm going to put a paper border, and the weighting of that border, or the size of it, I'm going to make it about 7 pixels or points, and I'm going to hit OK. I've created that style now, and now it's time to actually apply that style to all of my images. So I select all of the images, and then at the moment the style is none. What I want to do is just click on sunrise image style, and you'll see our style has been placed onto the images. And you can see the drop shadow, and you can even see the frame. And the drop shadow makes it look like these are actually sitting on top of each other, which is fantastic. Okay, what I want to do is just go back into our object styles real quickly, and I just want to show you under stroke you've got different types. So you could have wavy lines. Okay, so if you wanted a different effect, dashed lines, kind of looks like a postcard effect. Yeah, just some really cool different effects. So depending on what type of frame you wanted, you could have that effect. I'm just going to choose this solid type and hit OK. Good. We're up to the third page, and this page is very, very simple. We're only going to create some text and then make that a button to go back to the first page. Okay, so we're on the third page. I'm going to grab the text tool. I'm just going to draw a little platform, and now I'm going to write in it and say click here to go to page 1. I'll select that text. I'll make it bigger than it actually is at the moment. I will center it, and I will just close that down a little bit, move it to the center. That'll do. Now to make this a button, what we do, we need the buttons tab. Now it doesn't show here in this workspace, so we've got to change our workspace again. This time we're looking for maybe interactive or digital publishing. Either one of these should have it. And it does. There it is, buttons and forms. I click on buttons and forms. I make sure I've clicked on the text, and over here what I'm going to do is select the plus button, and I'm going to say that I want this to go to the first page. I can make it go to a URL. I can make it play sound or a video or do an animation, but in this case I just want it to go to the very first page of our magazine. Puts in all the settings for me. It's even named it button 1. I can rename that. I can tell it when I want it to do. If I roll over the text, then do that action and things like that. But in this case, I just want it to go to the first page. I'll leave all the default settings, and we're done. We're going to export our magazine now. Go to File, go to Export. We're going to export it on the desktop. I'm going to call this magazine for, well, actually, you know what? I'll call it Inspired Magazine, and I'll save it on the desktop. One thing you need to do is make sure that you have Generate HTML files off and you have Include Interactive Page Curl on. Everything else will leave at the default settings and hit OK. You can check out the default settings and play around with them next time. So we hit OK. I'm going to minimize my InDesign workflow, and let's open up our magazine and have a look at it. There it is there. The QR code, if you use your phone to read this QR code, it should take you over to the Cronulla High School YouTube channel. Now, what we do is flip the pages from the top right, and there's our nice little image break, and flip it again to our third page. Click here to go to page 1, and when I do click in there, we go back to page 1. Well, anyways, that was a long tutorial. Went for about half an hour, but I hope you learnt a lot. See you guys next time.